Hello, and welcome to Forget What You Learned, a place for families to stop and reflect on the modern state of education. We empower you to challenge your own thinking about today's traditional school system and ask the question, are my kids thriving? I'm Cory Greenberg, a parent in the trenches just like you, and I chat with innovators, experts, and other parents who are changing the conversation, inspiring families to reevaluate how we define academic success. This podcast is brought to you by Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations molding education through innovative one-on-one learning for students in today's digital world. In today's episode, we're going to unpack a concept you really don't hear much about. If the future is female, what does that mean for our young boys? I'm talking to Josh Horwatt, a brilliant and funny educational therapist in the Los Angeles area, who's been tackling this question both in his own home as well as in his practice. We dive into the science a little bit. The truth is, boys develop those executive functioning skills a year or so later than girls, but the expectations of focus, planning, and organization are equally distributed. What do boys need within the education system that isn't being addressed? What do you do when they come home and ask you, what is the point of all of this? Stay tuned for a lively conversation about raising boys today and how we can help them survive school.
Hello. I am so glad that you're joining us on the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about something you might not have thought about. And I'm going to start with this somewhat controversial position. If the future is female, does that mean that the future is not male? What does that mean for those of us who are raising sons? My guest today is going to help us unpack these questions and talk about the current state of our education system and its impact on our boys. Josh Horwatt is a seasoned educational therapist with a practice in the Los Angeles area. He's the founder and owner of Beyond Board Educational Services. I absolutely love the name of your business. And he provides both academic tutoring support and educational therapy to school-age kids. He's also the founder of a group program called Unbreakable Boys, using experiential techniques and mentorship to help boys develop leadership, discipline, and self-confidence. So Josh and I have known one another professionally for a little while now. And recently, he sent out a newsletter that got my attention. It was about this issue of how boys are really falling behind their female counterpoints when it comes to many metrics of success or happiness. And I just want to qualify, we're going to be talking about cisgender kids today. And I just want to acknowledge that while we are speaking in general terms about girls versus boys, there are many, many kids out there who identify as gender fluid or other non-binary terms. And these kiddos have a whole other burden that they're carrying within our current system, and another topic we really need to discuss both here and out there in the world. Just wanted to qualify that. So, Josh, welcome to the podcast. So good to have you here.
Thank you.
I would love to start with just, can you tell me, first of all, I did not know what educational therapy even was before I started working with Pacific Preparatory. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your story, like how did you get into educational therapy, and just a really brief, description of what the heck it is.
That is a really good question. And I'm sure if you ask 5 different educational therapists, you'll get 7 different answers. So I got into educational therapy. It popped up on my radar when I was working in a school, and it looked like a really cool way to have maximum flexibility within the realm of education. So I could work in a school environment within an education support department, or I had the option to go and start my own practice. And thankfully, with educational therapy, I've done both of those, and I've been very happy with it. Educational therapy it also sounds really cool, right?
It does. It sounds really fancy. Yeah.
Yes, it sounds a lot fancier than it is. It can be a lot of different things for a lot of different people, depending on what their background and experience is. So for me, I've chosen to focus on kind of the major issues that children face and the most common learning disabilities, which are dyslexia and ADHD. Um, so I've spent a lot of time learning about both of those, training myself in both of those, learning how to remediate both of those. Um, and then I've taken the skills that I've acquired through my life and through my own background about how to work with kids and motivate them and build confidence. And I've put that together into my practice to help lots of kids get over reading difficulties
Yeah.
and get through the slog of school. Um, but a lot of other educational therapists do things differently. Some of them take a very scientific approach and will use programs to help kids with learning disabilities, and other educational therapists might have more of a background in actual psychology or therapy, and they might mix the two together. I should point out that we're not therapists. we
Right.
it's different than psychology.
Yeah, it's similar in the sense of an occupational therapist, a physical therapist. It's not a mental health therapist, but it's someone who's specialized in, like you said, learning differences and sort of remediating that and supporting kids who are in traditional schools or any kind of school, really,
Yeah.
trying to understand that learning difference and how, just help them kind of navigate, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we are good at is getting to the root of a problem that a kid is facing in an educational environment and helping them figure out how to solve that problem. I think maybe that's philosophically what is at the essence of being an educational therapist.
Got it. And you mentioned that you sort of bring your own experience with kids, into your practice. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you have some kids of your own, and myself being a parent, that definitely informs, all of us professionally.
Yeah. Well, I have three kids, and my kids range in age from 17 to 12. Um, so right now I'm like getting kind of to the upper end of my practice, and I've
Yeah.
worked, I've had also my kids through when I was working with very young kids as well. Um, so it's been great to kind of like experiment on my kids to see what works for my clients and vice
Yeah.
versa. Um, so I guess what I bring into it is that I have an approach. When I started doing this, I realized like I don't want. I've seen kids sitting there with a teacher, with a tutor, bored out of their mind. The teacher and the tutor is bored out of their mind. And both of them look like they're suffering through this experience. And I said to myself when I started my practice, if I'm going to do this for a long time, I don't ever want to get to that point. So that is kind of built into the name of my business, Be On Board, and it's built into my practice. So I like to do things differently. I like to change them up. Believe I don't believe in sitting at a table and talking quietly. Sometimes if we need to yell and scream, sometimes that's how we learn things better. If we need to get underneath a table because that's a more comfortable learning environment for the kid, that's where we'll go. Um, I like to think of ways like if I walked into a session literally with nothing, if I didn't have my bag of supplies and all of that I usually bring with me, what would I do to make that session fun, enjoyable, worthwhile, and rewarding? And all of that kind of helps me develop an approach that I feel is a lot more rewarding to my students and also to me. It keeps me a lot more engaged as well.
I really wish that our entire education system took that approach into account because there is so much sitting and listening and waiting and all of
Yeah.
that built into, a 7-hour day. So you come in as this supplemental person who's, going to help the kids deal with that whole system when, I mean, a lot of them they're coming to you because they're struggling, right, within that system. So that sort of connects to our real topic for today, which is, what's going on with our boys within the system. So can you start us off with that piece?
Ooh, well, that's a very big question.
Hmm.
Um, there's a, uh, you know, there was this book written called The Boy Crisis by
Hmm.
Warren Farrell, and I think he laid it out really well. Um, the world is changing, and a lot of those changes are are not working in the favor of boys. And we could go on a long time about what all of those changes are. Um, but I guess if we're going to narrow it down to boys, right? Because I mean, this is something that affects men as well as they leave school and move on into the world and into their careers. Um, but school has changed in certain ways that don't work so well for boys. I think the school day has become more academic. It's become more scientifically managed. So, it's now more about standardized tests and making sure
Yeah.
that kids are prepared for those tests. So, uh, there's so much less time spent on what teachers themselves used to be able to bring to the table in the normal day of teaching, where they could switch directions, they could zoom in on a topic that kids were interested in, they could pay attention to their classroom and the makeup of that classroom and decide what's best for them. It's not like that anymore. And now it's packaged, and they need to hit these goals and targets by a certain time, and there's not
Yeah.
enough time to do that, so that they can take the test and the school looks good, and all the numbers are looking great. So that's part of what's changed. um, and also, the makeup of classrooms has changed in terms of teachers. I think something like it's the breakdown is something like 75% female teachers and 25% male.
Yeah.
Um, and being a female teacher is not in and of itself the thing that is, bad for boys, but but men and women in teaching have different energy and skill sets and the way that they run their classroom, and I think that also creates some challenges for boys, not because of the teachers again, but taking into account that boys and girls develop differently and at
Yeah.
different times. And so, like me as a boy, if you give me a group of boys and girls, I may have more of an intrinsic understanding of how to work with those boys and entertain them than I do those girls. Now, thankfully, I've raised two girls, and so I've gotten better at that. But
Yeah.
that's a big difference as well. If you have a group of boys and girls who are the same age um, biologically, but they may not be the same age cognitively. And what we know about brain development is that boys' prefrontal cortexes happen to develop at a slower rate than girls. So boys may be up to a year behind girls when it comes to prefrontal cortex development, which is executive functioning, which is basically impulsivity and organization and all the things that make you a good student. Well, girls get those skills quicker
Yeah.
in general. So yeah, so that is some of the elements of the crisis for boys in school.
Yes, I agree with every single thing you said. And, like you said earlier, I have a little learning lab at my house because I have two boys and one girl, and they are definitely very different. And there are some sort of general, you could say stereotypical things, but it's biological as well about their attention, their need to move their bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and also this a sense of motivation and the executive functioning piece. I think there's so much expected of our kids in middle school now compared to when you and I were growing up. Talk about this all the time just in the parent network about when we were kids, we got textbooks and we got worksheets, and we would take those worksheets home and do the homework and turn it in. And now there's Google Classroom this, there's, Word documents here and there. There's so many different ways that they have to manage their assignments, their schedules, and all of that. And it does seem like there's a vast difference between the boys and the girls and their response to these kinds of demands. Do you see that in just in terms of motivation to please the teacher or to get that A? Can you talk about that a little bit? I've seen it for sure.
Yeah. Um, I would go back to one of my favorite educational philosophers. His name is John Taylor Gatto, and every book he wrote is gold. And he used to be, it was back in the early 90s. He was like teacher of the year and he taught for 30 years in New York public schools. And then I think the story is he like famously quit and resigned his job as teacher because he couldn't stand it anymore for what the schools were doing to kids. I think he did it like in a Wall Street Journal op-ed or something like that. And then he became a very popular author and speaker. But one of the things that he said about school and curriculum is that everything in school is kind of designed to have kids focus outwards and focus on external things.
Yeah.
And even those external things are for the most of the time meaningless to those kids. Math and science, I don't want to say those things are not important, but they don't really help anybody construct meaning in life and who they are and what their life is about. And as people, even as kids, we're always in that constant process of defining who we are, understanding our purpose and our role in this world. And it's hard for me to look at school and see how school helps that in any way whatsoever. And I look at the assignments that my kids bring home and the things that they are learning about, and I don't get any sense of meaning from that as well. So what happens when kids are stuck in this environment where they have to learn about things that have very little impact on their lives for years?
Right.
And they're expected to pretend like they're motivated by it. And they're not. What they're motivated by is the story behind it. And the story that we tell them is that you do really well and you get these good grades, you're going to get to a good college. And then when you get to a good college, you're going to get a great career and your life is going to be set up. And so that's what they're motivated by, if they're motivated by anything. I've never seen a kid really motivated intrinsically by the content of what they're learning. Sometimes here and there, you'll find something that you're interested in, but that is the huge problem. And it's really hard to motivate. Okay, so girls I see are a little bit more motivated because they have that prefrontal cortex development, so they can process that story a little bit better. They're like, okay, I don't love this, but this is going to lead me to somewhere I want to get to. So I'm they have that saliency determination, and they can say, okay, this is important. I got to do this instead of sit on my phone. And boys they have that few percentage points less of that. And they're like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I can't get myself to do it. And it's ruinous. It's like, how many years can you expect kids to do this without falling apart or developing anxiety or developing a lot of the mental health issues that we see going up among kids?
I could not agree more with every single thing you just said. And like, what parent out there has not had this conversation with your kid when they bring home the busy work from English class or, the 40 math problems on a worksheet, and they say to you, when am I ever going to use this? I have a calculator in my pocket. I have access to Chat GPT now. And what is the point? What is the point of this? And every single parent out there has fumbled around and had that exact conversation you just had. Well, this is going to lead to that. And then you have to go to college and then you have to do this. And kids live in the moment. That's part of their brain development too. They live in the moment. So it's impossible to just convince them that this is what you have to do for some goal that's 10 years away.
Totally. We're reduced to telling them, Do you want to die hungry and alone
Exactly.
on the street? Then do your damn homework, kid. Like,
Or it
and that,
becomes because I said so. Because I said so.
right,
You
right.
know?
Just do it. Just get it done. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, so then it always leads me to the question of what the heck do we do about this? Who's doing it right out there? Like, is a single gendered school system the answer? Because there's definitely schools for girls, schools for boys that, you would think kind of take into account the different developmental, places that kids are in and their needs. Is that happening out there?
So that's a good question. First of all, the wheels of social change are very slow to move,
Yeah.
and also, you know, here's what I should say too, is that this whole question of boys is not because we've been focusing on girls and correcting the societal injustices that girls have faced for a long time. And that's a good thing. So we don't need to change our work for girls. We don't need to stop that. And like helping boys doesn't mean abandoning the girls. We
Right.
need to continue what we're doing for girls. Um, but but things are evolving and changing. The workforce and the workplace is evolving and changing, and that is what is challenging for boys. So we need to come up with new ideas. Now, as for who's doing things differently, there isn't anything on a systemic level that I know of. Richard Reeves just published a fantastic book called Of Boys and Men, and he gets into that question a little bit. And I had the opportunity to meet him recently, and he talked about how there were some states that were looking at creating, commissions on boys and how to help boys succeed. But hey, if you're a parent right now of a boy, don't expect those things to come into place to help your child. So here's what I would say. You as a parent need to be the one responsible to make sure that your kid has the best environment possible for their individual needs. So you have to keep your eyes open. Just because you've enrolled them in the top private school in your city doesn't mean that that's the best place for them. Just because it has a great reputation, you need to really look at who your kid is. There are some people out there who have programs for boys that are fantastic. There's a man named Nat Damon who has uh, a, a school out here called Reach Academy for young men, which is a summer program right now for boys,
Mm-hmm.
for high school age boys, which is awesome. There's Jason Wilson in Detroit, who's, if you look him up on YouTube, he's got these unbelievable videos of how he mentors boys in Detroit. I'm sure there are lots of other people who are running programs for boys, but there's also things that have always been around. If you have a particularly strong Boy Scout troop
Yeah.
where you are, that can be a really great experience for some boys. In making sure that they're enrolled in after school activities or sports or things that they enjoy can be great. And one of the things that you might need to do as a parent is say, uh, is to draw the line with school and say, listen, you know, my kid needs that time after school to do these things, and you might just have to deal with that. Like schools are going to push back, teachers are going to push back, but I would say like up until high school, none of that stuff really matters that much. If they didn't do all the homework they were supposed to do, I don't think that that's going to destroy their lives, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that that certainly does open that can of worms, right? Of, what are balancing our responsibilities, like the kids' responsibilities and being accountable, for what their assignments are and what's expected of them, but then also us as parents to say, we have to step in and say when we know that our kids need more balance. And going through a 7-hour workday, where it really is like a workday, and then having to come home and do more work is not
Yeah.
what we think of as, a successful work-life balance. So why are we expecting that of our kids?
Yeah.
And then one other thing I know you mentioned in this newsletter, which really spoke to me, is the idea of a sleepaway summer camp. If your kids are old enough to have them, disconnect from technology and to be, kind of going back to our feral roots, I think is how you put it, which I love, because when kids come home from summer camp, they're filthy. They've worn the same outfit 12 days in a row. But they've had the time of their lives and had that chance to be independent and to just kind of move their bodies, like, and to not have all of those demands on that prefrontal cortex. Does
Yeah.
that help?
That's huge. I think some of the best things that you could do with your kids at some point in their life that will make a lifelong, lasting, impactful change are sleepaway summer camp. And look, we have to recognize that not all of these options are available to everybody in
That's right.
every
That's
American
right.
family out there.
Yeah.
You have to have the means for it. And maybe in the long run, when we're talking about systemic changes, is figuring out a way to create publicly funded or government funded ways for kids to have these experiences. And I'm familiar with a few, but there certainly aren't nearly enough. Sleepaway summer camp. Another one would be like Outward Bound or NOLS, which is
Mm-hmm.
now National Outdoor Leadership something. Um, those are unbelievable programs, especially for boys. They allow boys to have experiences that they're not capable of having in school, which in my opinion are critical for boys and for their development, in ways that are very internal, and teach them not just like emotional regulation, but learning about themselves, learning how to deal with challenges, um, you know, communicating better, becoming leaders, being good followers when that's called for, and just disconnecting from, getting away from their phones and devices, and being out in nature and being
Yeah.
feral.
Yep. Yep. That is our nature, and I do think it's been sort of squeezed out of our kids in the interest of, the system and our
Right.
metrics for success now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to lighten the mood just a little bit.
Okay.
And we like to do the lightning round, which is 5 questions that you just answer really quick. So are you ready? We're going to go through the lightning round.
Okay. I'll do my best
You
here.
look scared. You look a little scared, Josh. It's going to be okay.
Okay. I'll try.
Okay. So the first question is, what's your favorite? And you've mentioned so many of these on the podcast, which we're going to put in the show notes for everyone to find. But what is your favorite education or parenting related book?
Um, okay. So I really like this one that I recently read called Decoding Boys by Kara Natterson.
Okay.
And written by she's a doctor, and it just really compassionately written and very informative about how boys develop.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Number 2, what do you like to do in your free time?
Okay, what free time? Let's start there.
Right.
But
Right.
if there is any, I love hiking and I love finding natural hot springs.
Ooh, are there some of those in LA?
Not in Los Angeles that I know of, but certainly, around LA, if you're willing to drive for an hour or two, you can get to some
Okay.
really nice ones. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the norm, right? Everyone drives for an hour or two whenever they're in Los
Right.
Angeles.
Yeah, you're going to be driving anyway, so might as well just drive out of LA.
Okay, number 3. This is a one-word answer. What do children in this world need more of?
Okay, barefootedness. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I hope that encompasses the whole thing.
I think it does. I think it speaks to this whole episode. Okay, number 4. What's your favorite feel good song?
I can't think of a song, but I would say just throw on the Commodores and I'm good.
Okay. You like to dance?
I like to dance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody
Okay,
can watch, but
No, that's right. You should always,
Yeah.
what, isn't there a song about that? Dance like no one's watching or something?
exactly.
Yeah.
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 That's
Okay,
me.
last one. If you could summon anything to your desk right now with like a magic button, what would it be?
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, so like I'll not say the obvious thing like just a pile of money. All right.
Uh-huh.
That would be nice. But how about a box with an unknown adventure inside? Adventure.
Oh,
And you just open the box and that's it. You have to go on the adventure, whatever it is.
that sounds incredible. And I would totally do it. Whatever it said, I would do it.
Okay. I'll let you know when it arrives.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for participating in the lightning round. And lastly, before we wrap up, can you just tell us, first of all, where to find you? And
Mhm.
if you have anything, coming up that you want to share with everyone listening.
Sure. You can find me. The best place to find me is my website Beyond Board. Or actually, I've switched it out. It's gobeyondboard.com. And I am on the socials, but I don't like the socials and I don't want to spend time on them. So I'm going to ignore
I
those.
understand.
Just find me
That's
at Go
fair.
Beyond Board, and you can always email me and we can go from there.
As the young kids say, they can DM you, right?
They can DM me in the old school way, right? Exactly, through email. DM me through email. It's a new thing.
I love it. I love it.
What's coming up for me? I'm focusing a lot on building something out in my practice where I have something that is not quite educational therapy, but it's also more than tutoring. So I have academic coaches who are working with kids, and we're really geared towards relationship building and helping kids who are having difficulty connecting. So that's what we've been working on, and yeah, and hopefully, relaunching Unbreakable Boys soon.
I love it. That program is amazing. And I think, I just think what you're doing really fills a niche that needs filling. So I am grateful to know you and really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I think this was a really important conversation. So thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, and thank you, Cory. I really appreciate the time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Forget What You Learned, hosted by me, Cory Greenberg. As always, our goal is to allow you to zoom out on the snapshot of your family's life and answer the question, are my kids thriving? We're here to inspire you to make those small and maybe big changes to answer yes. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pacific Preparatory and Tutor Corps, sister organizations committed to educating students with an innovative and holistic approach in today's digital world. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating and review. See you next time.